Your cybersecurity solution is here. Introducing Pentester's Advanced Cybersecurity Suite. Ready for peace of mind? Try it for free. No credit card required. Pentester.com.
Crazy prison, Attica, famous, right? Attica, Al Pacino, right? Dog Day Afternoon. Yeah. Psychopaths, but this guy was a happy-go-lucky guy. I knew he wasn't a pedophile. I knew he wasn't a degenerate, but I knew he had life, so I figured he committed a murder. He said he shot his wife and his mother-in-law and chopped off his wife's head and drove around with it in his car for 3 days before he got arrested for a kid. I said, call the CO and tell him you want to go in protective custody. And that's what he did, and I never saw the kid again. He checked himself. In the mob, murder is good. Murder is work. If you're capable of committing a murder, you're a good guy. You're a good. That's the one. When I was out with Tony Lee or my old man or any other wise guy, and they told me he's a good kid or he's a good guy or he did work, that meant he committed a murder or was capable of committing a murder. That was the terminology. Listen. I'll tell you a jailhouse story about a murderer. Now, this was not a mob guy. This was a guy, an upstate. This was actually an upstate guy. An upstate guy. So I'm in Attica. 1998, I'm in Attica. One of the worst prisons in New York State. One of the most high security, violent, crazy prison, Attica, famous, right? Attica, Al Pacino, right? Dog Day Afternoon. Yeah. So my job was, I was the light bulb technician. That was my job, because the Italian guys, we had the maintenance shop locked up. Teddy Persico, Skinny Teddy, who was the boss of the Colombo family now, he's back in prison. He was in Attica with me. Sally Dogs, he was a captain in the Genovese family. He was in Attica with me. And they had the maintenance shop locked down. So when I rolled into Attica, they pulled me right into the maintenance shop. And the reason why we wanted to work in the maintenance shop was because we were allowed to take showers every day, because we worked maintenance. Because in Attica, you could only take 2 showers a week. Or in the summer, you could shower out in the yard, which I didn't really want to do. But you could take 2 showers. You only took 2 showers a week on your tier. They would let you out of your cell at night for a couple of minutes, and you could shower twice a week. But in the maintenance shop, you could shower every day. There was showers right in the maintenance shop. And when we had visits that day, which was really big in prison, we would bring our pressed greens to the maintenance shop, and we knew we were getting a visit that day. We would take showers early in the morning in the maintenance shop and then wait for them to call us to go to the visit. So it was a really good job, and it was locked down by us, by the mob, that we had the maintenance shop locked down. So my job was, I had a push cart with all light bulbs in it, and my job was, I would have permission to go to all the blocks, A block, B block, C block, D block, the 4 blocks, which you couldn't really do, but I had permission because I used to have to go to the cells that needed new light bulbs. So I had a push cart. They used to tease me and call me the light bulb technician. I don't know how to fix that, right? So every day I used to go to Honor Block, and Honor Block is different than the rest of the prison. You had some privileges in Honor Block, and every day I would go to Honor Block, and I befriended this guy named Kevin. Happiest guy you ever want to meet. Always laughing, always talking. He had life, but in prison you don't really ask what you're here for, what you do, as long as they're not pedophiles or rapos. You know what I mean? That's the ones you don't socialize with. They're creeped out. Pedophiles, rapists, psychopaths, but this guy was a happy-go-lucky guy. I knew he wasn't a pedophile. I knew he wasn't a degenerate, but I knew he had life, so I figured, he committed a murder. So every day I would go to the honor block and he would wait for me with honey buns and coffee. And I would sit with him because there was tables in honor block, and I would have a cup of coffee and a honey bun and we bullshit. So this went on for a couple of weeks, right? Finally, one day I'm there and there's this old timer. I don't remember his name, but there was this old timer there that must have been, I think he was in prison from before they had airplanes. I mean, this guy was in prison forever. And he sees me talking to this guy, right? So I'm leaving honor block and he calls me over. He goes, hey, Anthony, come here, let me talk to you. So I go over and he goes, listen, he goes, you know, that guy Kevin that you've been hanging out with? He goes, you know what he's here for? I said, I'm assuming that he murdered somebody. He's got life. I know that. I'm not going to ask him. I know he's not a raper or a child molester. He goes, murder. He said he shot his wife and his mother-in-law and chopped off his wife's head and drove around with it in his car for 3 days before he got arrested drunk. I said, get the fuck out of here. This guy was the happiest guy you ever want to meet. Laugh, happiest guy you ever want to meet, right? I go, get the fuck out of here. I couldn't, even now I got goosebumps. I was in shock. I couldn't believe that this nice guy committed a heinous act like that. He shot his wife and his mother-in-law in their kitchen, then chopped his wife's head off and drove around. So now I had to ask him, right? So now I see him like 2 days later and I go, Kev. I said, what happened? He laughs. He goes, oh, you heard? He goes, I see. He goes, that she was a fucking bitch. I said, what did you do? He goes, I put her head in a cardboard box on the front seat and I would drive around. And he said, I pull her up by the hand, going, how do you like it now, you fucking bitch? And put her head back in the cardboard box. He had 50 to life.
Attention all realtors, check out listingtiger.com. Revolutionize your real estate listings with AI-powered descriptions that sell properties. Check out listingtiger.com. Use code MAGICLIST2024 for the first month free.
I mean, these are the people I lived with. These are the people that I lived with. And this is the guy that I drank coffee and ate honey buns with, but the nicest guy in the world. Do anything for me, love me. You know, and meanwhile, you know, it's crazy. You know, and my father used to tell me, and it's the God's honest truth, throughout my whole experience in the mob, all the schooling he gave me and all the lessons he taught me, he always told me, and he's 100% right, don't ever underestimate anybody. He told me anybody could kill you. He used to tell me, don't ever underestimate anybody, no matter what they look like, how they sound, how they dress. Don't ever underestimate anybody. Anybody could kill you. He used to tell me at any time. And he was right. Yeah. He's still in jail, that poor bastard. He said he hated them. He hated, you know, but you know, listen, he had an addiction. I mean, he was a drunk, you know, listen, even though he did that, he wasn't a murderer. He wasn't a criminal. He was an alcoholic that blew his top. You know what I mean? That's how you could tie addiction into all this. Because this guy wasn't a criminal. I was a criminal. I was in jail because I was a criminal. This guy wasn't a criminal. This guy was a working guy that couldn't take it anymore, that was drunk and had a gun and shot them and then flipped out and chopped the fucking head off in a fit of rage. You know what I mean? Like, but he wasn't a criminal. He wasn't a serial killer or he was just a regular guy that lost it, you know, like an like OJ Simpson type of thing, you know. But that's how addiction plays into all that. That's why in prison, so much of the population is tied into, you know, addiction. I was there because I was a criminal. Like mob guys are there because we're criminals. I mean, there's guys there that are out and out criminals, but most of the 80% of the inmates are there for drug-related or alcohol-related incidents. I was there with another kid that had no business. He had to go in protective custody. He was getting abused and shook down and crazy. He was a kid from upstate, a legitimate kid. He got drunk on a cliff and his girlfriend fell off the cliff. And he went to jail because they were arguing and maybe he pushed her and she fucking fell off the cliff and died. he had no business being in jail. They were shaking him down, the gangs. He was crying. He was in the cell next to me, crying, begging. I told him he didn't even know what to do. I said, listen, call the CO and tell him you want to go in protective custody. He didn't even know what to do to save himself. I said, call the CO, because I had to tell the guys to stay away from the cell because I was in the cell next to him, and they would come there and they would try to have sex with him. You know, he was scared to death, and they would take his commissary, and I would tell him, hey, get the fuck out of here. I don't want to hear that shit. Because he was right in the cell right next to me. And then finally one morning I went out of my cell and I told him, listen, you got it. Don't you know what you got to do? And he didn't even know what to do. He goes, no, I don't know what to do. He was trembling, the poor kid. I said, call the CO and tell him you want to go in protective custody. And that's what he did. And I never saw the kid again. He checked himself in, but he didn't even know to do that.
That was another question that came up. So if you are in prison and you choose to go into protective custody,
you're finished. You're creeped out.
You're creeped out, right? But what's the downside of that? If you're removed from that population, isn't that better?
Well, not for a guy like me. If I put myself in protective custody, I'm punked out. I mean, I can't. Anybody that puts himself in. See that there's two things. There's IPC, and then there's PC. And you get paperwork. So if you go in protective, like, I'll give you for instance, New Park Pizza. The incident when the kid got killed on the Bell Parkway, that was a big racial thing, right? So I knew them kids. So they went to prison, and they were tough kids, and they refused to go and put themselves in protective custody, but the facilities they were in put them in protective custody. So they got paperwork. So when they went to another facility and they were in regular population, they had paperwork that said IPC. IPC is involuntary protective custody. So that's okay because you didn't do it yourself. The administration did it, not you. But once you go into PC and you sign yourself in, you're done. You can never come back. That's like you're done. You're finished. You come back out to the yard, you're fucked. Once they know, you can't do that. You can't do that. Like if I went to prison now, God forbid, I would be put in protective custody immediately because I cooperated with the government. So I would be put in protective custody immediately. Not that I would have to sign myself in. They would just put me in immediately. I would be designated right to protective custody. Like in Attica, what's his name was in protective custody. The guy that killed John Lennon was in protective custody. I always try to get in there to change his light bulb. So I want to tell him, but I could never get in there to see him.
Epstein was in protective custody, no?
Epstein was in lockdown. Yeah, protective custody, but he still hung himself. Allegedly. Yeah. Maybe he hung himself with a little help from his friends. All right, so I like to, so don't forget, thanks for tuning in, and don't forget, if you like the content of Reformed Gangsters, please subscribe, ring the bell. Also, don't forget about Patreon. The membership starts at $1 and up, for Q&As, for really good content. And don't forget also about the store. Check it out. We got mugs, we got T-shirts, we got hats. It's really cool stuff, good quality. So give that a check out, and I'll see everybody soon. If you enjoy my show, please join my Patreon, ask your questions live, and please join my Patreon at reformedgangsters.com.